Coventry City called this place home for 106 years before that final whistle at their championship game with Derby County in April 2005. That signalled an emotional end to an era and a move to a 32,000 all-seater super arena. The club's playing days at Highfield Road may be gone, but the memories of their famous old home will last forever. The ground saw its fair share of great goals, world-class stars, charismatic managers, and of course, plenty of drama. Highfield Road wasn't Coventry City's first home. In fact, it wasn't even its second. The club started life as Singers FC, formed by cycle workers from the factory of the same name. In 1883, their first pitch was located on Dowell's Field, near where the Gosford Park Hotel is currently located on St George's Road.
They used to use the White Lion at Gosford Green as the club headquarters. And as far as I know, they used that as the changing rooms and would trot across from the pub to the field. That pitch would have been almost like a farmer's field, with no turnstiles or gates. It was just a pitch on a field, and they probably went round and collected tuppence from everybody who was standing round in a hat.
Singers spent just 4 years at Dowell's Field before moving to a new enclosed ground called Stoke Road in 1887. This was just south of the Highfield Road ground, with the club's headquarters being based at the Binley Oak pub in Paynes Lane.
The Stoke Road ground, they were there about 12 years, and it gradually developed, but it wasn't very sophisticated. I think even at the end they had maybe a small grandstand with a couple of hundred people. They had wire around the pitch. They had hedges so that they could actually control the fans, the spectators coming in, and take money off them. But it wasn't very sophisticated. But having said that, you know, we've got to remember that Coventry City at that time were in the Birmingham Junior League, which was a very, very sort of lowly league. So the expectations of a grand stadium weren't really there.
Changes came thick and fast for the club around the turn of the century. They changed their name from Singers to Coventry City in 1898, and a year later they moved to the ground that would become their home for the next 106 years. Highfield Road in the 1890s was a far cry from the ground that Coventry are leaving behind.
The area they moved to was actually a cricket pitch with a row of elm trees across the site, almost exactly where the halfway line is at Highfield Road now. And the first job they had to do was remove those elm trees, and then they had to level the pitch, relay the turf, and go about preparing a pitch. I hate to use the word stadium because it wasn't a stadium, it was a ground, but they had an enclosure. They had banking on 3 sides of the pitch, and on the site of the main stand now they had the first stand, which held around about 2,000 spectators. It impressed a lot of people, and the stand was impressive when you walked up Highfield Road, because that was the only street that was built around that area at the time. That's why the ground was called Highfield Road. People coming from the city centre region would walk up Highfield Road, and they would see across the pitch, they would see the stand in front of them.
The early part of the 20th century saw Coventry elected to the Southern League as they started to make a name for themselves in the FA Cup. A record crowd of more than 19,000 saw them lose to Everton in the quarter-finals of that competition. The gate receipts from that cup run enabled them to build a new grandstand on the north side of the ground. That would remain in place until 1964.
They obviously made some good money. I think the receipts for the Everton game alone were £1,000, which was, would be in today's terms would probably be like £500,000. And with the money they made from the cup run, they built a second grandstand on the opposite side, on the site of the current sky blue stand. And that was a bit more impressive than the old stand. I think it held about 2,500 people, and they did some terracing work on the ground. They built a fence around the pitch, and generally spent a bit of money tidying things up.
The years after World War I were rather turbulent for Coventry. They were elected to the Football League, but struggled to cope with a step up in class. The crowds continued to still turn up, however, and the ground's record gate was broken on many occasions. Times were changing at Highfield Road.
They bought an old stand from Twickenham rugby stadium, or rugby ground, and they transported it to Highfield Road and just used the roof as a cover for the what is now the west stand, the west end of the ground. And they discovered when they were erecting it that there was a massive slope from one side to another, so they had to do some hasty engineering to make this roof fit over the terrace, or over that end of the pitch.
Coventry City had always played in blue and white, and in 1922 they decided to change to the civic colours, the city civic colours of green and red. In the close season of 1922, Herbert Kendall and 25 volunteers from the supporters club actually came to the ground during the summer holidays and facilitated a lot of ground improvements, which included the renovation of turnstiles. They more or less completely painted every stand and fence in the ground green and red.
In the mid-1920s, they did move a lot of earth and rubble from the building of the Coventry tramways to Highfield Road, and built up the cop end, which was the Swan Lane end of the ground. So that made it a much bigger bank than the other sides of the pitch, and it was called the Spire Cop, like many sort of bank terraces around the country were in those days.
I remember walking up outside the streets and the crowds that were building up, and I got a little bit frightened because I was only down there and people were walking past, they were up there. And I got a little frightened, but my dad quietened down. He said, "You wait till we get on the ground," he says, "and I'll put you on one of the barriers." And that was the barriers there, and you'll be able to see the game. Because I was worried that I wasn't tall enough to see what was going on. And we got on the ground and I got onto this barrier, and I was sure it was Northampton Town that we played. But I know we won, and that got me going. I was happy. We won. Coventry won.
The years leading up to World War II saw a big improvement on and off the pitch at Highfield Road. Clary Borton was the darling of the Coventry fans. His goals helped Coventry win promotion to the second division in 1936, while off the pitch the ground itself was starting to take shape.
As a result of winning promotion, they put in train the building of a new stand to replace the original 1899 grandstand, and that was called the main stand.
There was the houses at the back where they used to open the shutters up and you go and get a cup of tea. Well, when they built this big stand and they stopped that game, the chaps used to walk round with tanks on the back with a pump on it and used to fill it up for tuppence, plastic cups.
Gates were high, they were averaging over 20,000, and each of the next 3 summers they carried out additional work on the stadium. They put in more terracing at the cop end. They built what was known by many fans as the Crow's Nest up in the one corner of the Spine Cop, and they then built a canopy on the main stand because too many fans were complaining they were getting wet.
There was a wooden stand here, And at the top end of the football ground, that was like a cowshed. It was just a cover, that's all there was there. And of course the Spion Cop was there, and that's where we used to stand, on the Spion Cop. I used to come sometimes 2 hours before a game, because I'm being small, I'd got to have a spot, and the steps went down, and I used to stand on the end of the step.
I'm standing on Spion Cop one game when some bloke got excited and somebody nearly scored, and he kicked out with his right foot and kicked somebody up the rear end. Because that caused a bit of a commotion. This bloke wanted to start a fight, and my father was about 5'10", 17 stone, and he just turned around and said, "Be quiet, I should be in the hospital."
Clary Borton was the finest centre forward that Coventry City ever had. His goal scoring record was second to none. He scored 172 goals in 5 seasons.
He was an absolute idol. And he was brilliant in the air, but he was also very good on the ground. But we had 2 good wingers then who could go down the line, put the crosses over, and Clary would be there to put the finishing touches to them.
World War II pretty much brought an end to competitive football in England, but games were still being played at Highfield Road. That was until the ground, like most of the city, was severely bombed in 1940. Although Highfield Road was patched up, it wasn't until 1942 that friendlies were again staged there.
I'm right in saying that it took a couple of bombs during the war, and it never really got it. Just after the war, it never really got the flow that you got. I mean, that's beautiful. That is. You can play snooker on that, but you couldn't play it like that. You know? And it was your boots. The boots were different. The ball was different. The ball was leather. If you got rain and you got mud on it, it stayed on it. It didn't come off like it did now. You headed the ball and you headed the lace. Oh.
There were a couple of big holes in the pitch. There was a crater on the terraces at the west end, and football had to be halted there. And there were no games played for almost 2 years until they could afford to put right the damage.
In the wartime, Billy Morgan and Charlie Elliott, I was in the AFS then, and they were firemen at the central station. And because they kidded you like mad, you know, especially Billy. He was a great man.
My father one Saturday brought me along to this stadium, and what a welcome it was. I was flabbergasted. There was 29,000 people. It was a local derby against Birmingham, and it was just couldn't get over it. I was the football bug hit me there and then. This was something for me. This atmosphere was fantastic.
The post-war years started off pretty well for Coventry, but after knocking on the door of promotion to the First Division, they were relegated to the Third Division in 1952. They continued to make ground improvements, however, and for some people it was a joy just to have a chance to play at Highfield Road.
It's my first game for the first team, so I'm sitting in the dressing room 15 minutes before the kick-off getting changed. And the tannoy comes on, team changes. For number 9, instead of Ted Roberts, Jack Evans. And what did I hear? Oh! And I'm sitting in the dressing room and I've listened to that, all of them, that, oh! That was it. That was a good start, that was, wasn't it? But it all ended well. I got the winning goal, so that was it. I got the goal that end. Cross from Leslie Warner from there, nodded in, so that was it.
What was that like?
Brilliant. I got a standing ovation coming off, which was very pleasant, very pleasant. Yes, it was. It was. That was my 10 minutes of glory, that was, yeah.
Well, the ground didn't really change very much from the war right through to the early 1960s. The major development was really in floodlights, and Coventry City installed their first floodlights, which were literally lamps on wooden poles around the pitch in 1953.
Also in 1957, the Supporters Club raised money for the building of new floodlight pylons. It was a new floodlighting system. It cost £15,000, and they replaced the original floodlighting system.
Those floodlights actually lasted right through till 1994. 3.
But the thing about Highfield Road for me was the fact that football at Coventry City kept me very fit. Because at 8 years old, we used to go down the town in the morning to the pictures and run there and run back, and I used to live at the other side of the city. And then in the afternoon, after shoveling our dinner down, we'd run down here and run back after the game. And I used to sit over there in the corner by the sparring cop, leaning on the wall because the wall was low enough for us. And it was just an exciting time to come and be with all the grown-ups, because we didn't have to bring our parents. We could come and enjoy ourselves and then buy buns and things on the way home with the bus fare we'd save, because we'd run both ways.
You know, you didn't have cars in those days. You got the bus and then you walked from town all the way up. Just mixed in with the crowds and walked up with them. We pay at the turnstiles. There was no season tickets or anything in those days. You just paid at the turnstiles and went in.
A very uneven pitch. There was a drop from one side to the other of about 12 foot. The terraces were nearly all open. The grandstands were antiquated. But it was just atmosphere. It was great to be here.
It's a bit of a dump, really. It's all sheds, and so the only exciting thing was the meat pie, really.
After years in the doldrums, Coventry City soon became the talk of football, thanks mainly to Jimmy Hill.
Well, I'd met the then chairman, Derek Robbins, at a social evening with Jim Laker. I remember he knew Derek and I didn't beforehand, but he introduced me and we sat together and talked about football and football management and things like that. And I had no idea that at the back of his mind after that evening, he was thinking about me as the manager. But he did invite me to come up and be his guest and watch Coventry play in a cup tie against Kings Lynn. Which I did. I didn't actually sit on the posh side where all the directors were. I sat on the other side and watched Coventry lose 2-1. And I thought, my goodness, Kings Lynn, now where do they come from? And Derek also thought that would be my complete loss of interest in wanting to manage Coventry City. But it worked the other way because you can't do any worse than that, losing in the cup at home to a non-league side. So on that basis, I thought it was a wonderful time to start with Coventry low in the division, out of the cup, right at the bottom, because there was only one way to go, that was up. It was my first full-time management job, so anything was exciting, really. Having been a player, and knowing very little about it, because as a Fulham player I wasn't anything to do with the management there. My coaching was just to do with getting the team to win matches on the field. So then suddenly to be called boss, I mean, that was a funny thing for me, because it wasn't in my vocabulary. Nobody was boss, and that's why I didn't like it. And so I asked the players if they would call me JH. And that, in fact, it was someone that had suggested it as an idea. I've forgotten which one it was now. And I said, that sounds a very good idea. I'll be JH. And I still am JH. George Curtis still calls me JH. John Sillett when I see him. It's quite weird. The past has overwhelmed us, as it were.
After arriving as manager in 1961, he turned the whole club on its head, introducing the Sky Blue kit, a Sky Blue song, and most importantly, 2 promotions.
Something was happening at last. We were in prospect of doing something, going somewhere. I mean, we hadn't been a bad team, but we just hadn't been doing anything very exciting or different or whatever. And it needed him to light the blue touch paper, and then we all stood back and watched the rocket go up. It really was an amazing time. You can't describe it. You can't describe it. And although we get excitement here now, it still doesn't match what Jimmy Hill gave us.
He was a great innovator and had terrific ideas, and I understand different ideas in training as well, and certainly did a fantastic job at Coventry City. They owe a lot to him.
The atmosphere in the ground was electric, because the club rarely lost at home. You know, in the period from say 1962 to 1967, the club only lost about 8 or 10 home games, if that.
The actual Sky Blue thing, in fact I'm quite sure, came from probably Derek Henderson, who was the local reporter in those days. And there was a headline that they used, Sky Blue, because we had a new Sky Blue kit, and the local paper, Coventry Evening Telegraph, must take the credit for doing the first Sky Blue in print. And from there it caught on, and it was perfect really for the for the purpose for which we went into Sky Blues, for people to know about Coventry City Football Club and that it was on its way up.
He brought in the Sky Blues, he brought in the Sky Blues song, and we always used to have a sing-song on the coach, and he would lead the singing, he'd be standing there in the front conducting the boys all singing away.
We actually wrote the words to Let's All Sing Together, Play Up Sky Blues on a Saturday evening when John Campkin, who was then a director, and he did commentary on other football club matches, and he came home on the Saturday night and we said, we haven't got a song, what are we going to do about it? I said, well, the Eton boating songs, it's a nice, I've always thought that was a nice, pleasant little singable lyric, shall we say, but why don't we do our own lyrics? So the two of us, over a bottle of wine, sat down and wrote Sky Blues song. Let's all sing together, play up Sky Blues. While we sing together, we will never lose.
Let's all sing together, play up Sky Blues. While we sing together, we will never lose.
Let's all sing together, play up Sky Blues.
Proud Posh or Tottenham, United or anyone, they won't defeat us, we'll fight till the game's won. And everybody be singing it to their heart's content, Great.
And it's a wonder that nobody in the league didn't complain that we were getting a special advantage from our crowd and not giving the visitors the reception they deserved, and that they were not playing on an even keel.
With the likes of George Curtis, John Sillett, Bill Glazier, George Hudson and Ian Gibson in the side, Coventry soon became a force.
Suddenly I get a phone call from James Hill, who'd just taken over his first manager's job at Coventry, who said to me, John, you're going to be my first signing. I remember coming up the M1, which had just opened, and my brother had come with me. We were playing Burnley in a festival match it was, and friendly for the cathedral. And I arrived, and when I saw the ground, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't get my breath. I said, what have I done, Pete? He said, well, come on. He said, it'll be all right. Let's go and look at the pitch. Well, when we looked at the pitch, it was on a big slope. And I said, I need one leg longer than the other one to play here. And I looked at Jimmy, I said, what have you done to me? He said, it's all going to be changed. He said, by the time this season ends, you come back next season for pre-season training, it'll all be changed. And sure enough, right to his word, it had all changed.
It was Jimmy Hill, and together with the chairman, Derek Robbins, who instigated almost like a clean sweep of the stadium, and in 5 years they put up 3 brand new stands.
They reached the FA Cup 6th round in 1963 as a 3rd division side, and only eventual winners Manchester United were able to stop their momentum. But it was their success in the league that made everyone sit up and take notice. The 3rd Division Championship in 1964 was soon followed by the 2nd Division title in 1967. A record crowd of over 51,000 packed into Highfield Road to watch Coventry clinch that title against Wolves.
That was an extraordinary afternoon. I mean, it's an unforgettable one. It wasn't only an afternoon, because we didn't go to bed early that night.
I watched the game from on the terrace and in front of the Sky Blue stand. 51,455 people crammed in here, and they were literally everywhere. They were on top of the stand roofs. They were climbed up the floodlight pylons. They were on top of the little bars that was placed on the spine cot on the roofs.
Well, I always used to stand on a stool that was my granddad's, and I was stood there over at the spine cop end, and as the crowd got bigger and bigger, I was gradually being moved away from a stool, and I was being shifted down and supported miles from a stool.
But to have 51,500 people in at a stadium that, I look at the crowds these days, 14,000, 15,000, and you wonder where they all come from. But it really was a most exciting occasion. We let the kids come down on the side of the pitch, basically, so that, we had to, because there were so many people, and it's not the biggest ground in the world.
They took me above their heads, carried me down onto the pitch, and I sat watching the match from the pitch side. And honestly don't remember much about the game. I was more worried about my dad standing behind me.
And it made such an atmosphere for the game. And of course, with a little help from above, we didn't lose it. in those circumstances. I mean, Wolverhampton, you know, were a much bigger club than Coventry in those days, and they had brought masses of people over expecting to be able to see the game, and they all did see the game, 51,500 people.
I mean, you could have killed for a ticket, and the ground was absolutely jam-packed. And the atmosphere, I mean, we couldn't be, and when we'd won the game and we knew we were going up, I mean, I've never felt a feeling like that before. It was the sort of thing in weak people would have induced a heart attack, you know. But it carried us for months afterwards, that did, you know. We were so excited about seeing the big teams and meeting the big boys, who we used to beat in the Premier League and First Division. It was the bread and butter sides that we had trouble with, but we used to give the big teams, always gave them a good game.
The Jimmy Hill era lasted 6 years. He resigned to join ITV Sport in 1967. Despite the shock of losing an inspirational leader, the club would stay in the top league for another 34 years, and they made further improvements to the ground in 1968, although they hadn't planned to before a fire gutted the main stand.
During that first season in the First Division, in March, there was a major fire at the stadium, and the main stand, the 1936 main stand, was burnt down, or substantially burnt down, after a fire. Now the fire was caused by, there was a reserve game on one evening, and the theory is that a lighted cigarette fell down between the wooden seats and burnt the rubbish that had accumulated over many years and created quite a big fire.
The difficulty was underneath the stand was a suite of offices, storerooms and so on, and the fire had started there and spread up into the stand. So we had to get into the stand itself and tackle the fire, which was very difficult. It was a bit of a wreck. The main damage you could see from where we were the seating area. Around about a third to a half of the seating area was destroyed. And of course all the offices and storerooms underneath the stand as well was destroyed. One of the members of staff did come up to us during the fire and want to know if any of the cups had been destroyed, and we said no, the fire hadn't reached the kitchen.
The problem was, in 10 days' time, they had Manchester United arriving for one of the biggest games in the club's history. And somehow they managed to patch up with some scaffolding and what have you, patch up that stand so that the patrons could be seated, and 10 days later they had 47,000 in the ground, the second biggest gate in the club's history.
When I first arrived, of course there was just a blank space there where the stand had been, and so my first 2 weeks there with the agency, worked in a caravan in front of the Sky Blue stand, because of course there was no office space. But then when I went back on a full-time basis, we had a house at the end of King Richard Street. I started off in a bedroom, and then I moved down to the kitchen, where Neil's office was, Neil Solomon's office, and from there watched the newsstand going up.
That summer they decided to demolish the remainder of the stand and rebuild a new main stand. Again, they did it over the close season, and it was ready. I think they had to postpone 2 home games, to enable the stand to be finished.
Oh, it was amazing, yes. I mean, you used to arrive in the morning and there was a little bit more added to it, and in no time at all it was finished. It was wonderful. And to actually then move into proper offices after being in a caravan and a little house, it was just wonderful. There was so much space we didn't know what to do with ourselves.
The 70s were almost as dramatic as the 60s. Coventry would clinch a place in Europe and even beat Bayern Munich at Highfield Road, albeit after a 6-1 defeat in Germany in the first leg of their second-round Fairs Cup match. The decade started with a bang as Willie Carr set up Ernie Hunt for arguably the best goal ever scored at Highfield Road, the infamous donkey kick.
Couldn't believe what he'd done, you know. No one's done it really. I don't think anyone's done it since.
We couldn't believe what we'd seen, and it was only really afterwards that we realised that this was an epic moment in the life of football at Coventry.
Absolute amazement. I mean, because he was a cheeky player. He was always a cheeky bloke. If he was on talking on television, on the radio, you could see the humour coming through, you know. And for him to do a cheeky thing like flicking the ball up like that and for it to be whipped into the net was absolutely... We couldn't believe it, you know. It's one of those things you sort of rerun in your mind over and over again. And I dare say, if he did it another 100 times, it wouldn't have gone in again.
I was behind the goal when that was scored. When they actually took the kick, we wondered what they were doing because Willie Carr stood over the ball with his feet either side of the ball, and you think, what's he doing? And he flicked it up, and when it went in, amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think the really sort of amazing thing to me is that afterwards, they said that they took it in training and didn't score one.
And it just, boom, straight over the top, straight in the far corner, and the place just erupted. You know, it was all these one-off things, and it just worked, and it was absolutely magical. Who was it?
Hunt! Oh, what a goal! Well, they don't come much better than that. Right out of the book, and on the first line too.
My first memory of Highfield Road is walking up these steps here, and the last few steps before coming out to look at the ground, and the sunshine starts to sort of filter down the stairway there, and as I came over the top, I just remember looking out absolutely astonished that it was in colour. Because we'd only ever had black and white telly at home, and I'd only ever seen football match of the day in black and white. And you know, the pitch was green, the sky was blue, it was August, it was sunny, the players were all warming up, both teams, and the supporters everywhere. It was just fantastic. It was in colour, and that was my first memory of Highfield Road 35 years ago, and been hooked ever since. My favourite player of all time was Tommy Hutchinson. And he was so silky smooth with his skills, and you know, razzle dazzle Tommy was the cry that went up. And I haven't seen very many players that show that kind of class on a football pitch.
Oh, he's a wizard with the ball. Yeah, wizard he was. Yeah.
He was a good winger, and he could outrun anybody, I reckon, in them days. I used to love Tommy. Like a little whippet he was, well, a big whippet really, but you know.
When I came here, we were bottom of the league. We went 14 games in the trot without losing, and from then on, not only the first team but the youth team did really well. And I think the year that I left, even I think it was about 12 or 14 of the youth team actually went on to play in the first division. The main one that stands out for me is when we played here. We played Liverpool, and that night we went top of the league, beat them 1-0. I scored the goal, and I think it was the only goal I scored that season, mind. But I think that was a big doing in me actually being picked to play for Scotland. And I think at the time when I played here, for me to get picked for Scotland was like winning the lottery without buying a ticket.
Give him the ball, and he could guarantee he would get the ball across. And the number of chances that he created and the goals he scored himself. Great player.
He got the ball and yeah, everyone stood up immediately. If it could be in our penalty area, didn't matter. Tommy's got the ball, and you know, and he could just beat players for fun. Like, well, you don't really get them anymore, do you? You know, but probably I guess the Ronaldo of his times in a way. It was just fantastic to watch, and always delivered. When you had Mick Ferguson in the box knocking down to Ian Wallace, you know. I think we even finished 6th one year.
I think it took a little while for the crowd to come round to the way I used to play. I don't think they took to me instantly. I think eventually, it was probably when Ian Wallace came along and we struck up a reasonable partnership, that I think they finally got to understanding my type of game, my strengths if you like, and not always honing in on what might have necessarily been your weaknesses. Wally just seemed to know where I was going to put the ball, and I just seemed to know where Wally was going to be, and it just spiralled from there. And I remember the pitch was always fantastic. The groundsman was always really good, and it was one of the best pitches in the league, and it all of the time, even when I played there as a professional and went on to play a lot of games. I always felt Highfield Road surface was always fantastic.
The prodigal son returned in 1975 when Jimmy Hill came back to Highfield Road as a director. 5 years later, he was chairman and made the controversial move of turning Highfield Road into an all-seater stadium.
It's harder to be a hooligan sitting down. That was a phrase that I invented, and in selling it to people who were against it and suspicious of it and worried how much it was going to cost, I was never in any doubt that it was the thing to do. I mean, some things you do in life and you know you're taking a chance. Sometimes you put a bit of money on a horse and you think it's going to win and it doesn't. I didn't have any doubts that that was the way in which football had to go.
I think the club, when I came here, and even going to other clubs, his thinking was probably 10 years ahead of everybody else, with the changing rooms, with the dressing rooms, with the training facilities, with the way that we travelled, with the kit and equipment that we had, even down to the kids and how we looked after the kids. Even as senior players, we had to mix with the youth kids, and we had a great, I think we probably were one of the first one that had a hostel actually on the ground, so the kids had somewhere to come. It wasn't a case of getting stuck in digs somewhere.
The early part of the 80s would prove a tense time for Coventry, as last day wins to avoid relegation became a regular occurrence, including a 4-1 over champions Everton in 1985.
Well, they were highly pressurised, as you can imagine. The first time I was here, 84, 85, we had to win the last 3 to stay up. And we've never ever done that. It was an incredible performance. We won at Stoke away, Luton here, and Everton at home. And the pressure's on. I mean, been in the Championship in the top flight for nearly 30 years, and to go down was incredible. But the last game against Everton here, beating them 4-1 or 4-2, I think it was an incredible scene. It was like winning the FA Cup. It really was. The fans surviving in the top flight. It was a great day. In the sunshine in May, beating Everton. Can't get any better. But we shouldn't have been there in the first place.
The atmosphere after the game was just relief and just unbelievable that they'd annihilated the champions, and Everton had a really good side out. It's just fantastic.
My best memory is we beat Everton 4-1, our last game of I think 84 season, and we had to win 4 in a row to stay up, and we won them all 3. And then Everton were the champions, came down here, and we beat them 4-1. It was fantastic. It was sunny. It was April. Yeah, they were already champions, and we invaded the pitch, which was the only time I've ever done it. But it was the days when you had the fencing and the paint across the top, so we all got covered in pink paint and things like that. But no one cared at the time. It was just, yeah, that was fantastic.
There were some good performances by the lads really in that match. They needed to be, but at the same time, you know, it was a hard match to sit and suffer. I promise you, as a supporter, I hated every minute of it until the final whistle.
I remember the fans' reactions, the players' reactions. It was almost as if we'd won something at the end of it. We'd only just staved off relegation. We should have been hard in the faces, really. But it really was as if we'd, got promoted or won something. Such was the excitement that, that there was at the time.
Coventry City were making the headlines for all the right reasons in 1987, however, as Highfield Road was transplanted to Wembley for an historic afternoon.
Everyone was round the road here, all camped out in tents and stuff, waiting to get the tickets for the FA Cup final.
I looked at it and I thought, yeah, we're going to win a cup. That's what I stated, and it was all in the press. So it says he'll win the cup. I didn't mean that cup. I didn't mean the FA Cup. I meant the Leamington Hospital Cup, because we won it every year we played it. Trying to be smart, Alec turned round and I've been sort of stuffed with my own words. And from there on in, I thought, right, we'll show them we can win a cup. People don't believe me. I've watched it 4 times. That's all. Because I want to keep the memories without having to look back at them. I've got them, they're there every day with me. I think there's some part of that final every day. I don't forget it. Not at all. I don't forget one part. I remember even walking out of the tunnel, and proudest moment of my life. And you hear Kill Klein and Captain behind us, should we let the fat devil go out on his own? You hear those sort of things going on. And great moments to walk out on Wembley and to hear the crowd, the roars, deafening.
We actually warmed up in the tunnel in them days. You weren't allowed out on the pitch to do your warm-up. So the first time you actually went out for the crowd proper was to go out and do the match. And as you kind of broke from the tunnel, you break into that brilliant sunshine and that colour and that noise, and mind-blowing, fantastic memories.
I think we had
3/4 of the ground were full with Coventry fans, I think, that day. So it's it's like a home match for us, really, in a way. I think obviously the neutrals were supporting us as well, because we were the underdogs, I think, and and it went a long way, to helping us, I think, having that support.
The stadium was ablazing with sky blue. Everybody, that could get a ticket got one. I would have thought all the black market tickets went to Sky Blue fans, and it was a terrific day, especially when you bear in mind that we went down. I think we were losing, twice in the game and ended up winning 3-2. It did go down as probably one of the best cup finals of the era.
No, I remember looking up and I said a little prayer to my mother. I said, Mum, we've made it. The tactics had all been to keep a clean sheet for 20 minutes. Vital against a side like Tottenham. You hold them for 20 minutes. And the game starts in 2 minutes, you're gonna go down. And Big George looked at me and said, what are we doing now, Sil? I said, if I had a drink, I would take it. If not, I've got great belief in these players, George. They'll get back in the game. They'll win us this game. Don't worry, just sit there and relax. I must admit, I was lying at the time because I thought, God, it could be 7. Come on, lads, don't let us down.
I think it was probably meant to be, because the only way that ball could have gone in the net, or the only place in the net that ball could have gone, was where it went, and it was just maybe it was meant to be.
I used to do a lot of after dinner speaking, and one of the lines that I used to say during Margaret Thatcher's day as Prime Minister, during her time as Prime Minister, I used to say, why has Margaret Thatcher chosen Coventry City as the training ground for British astronauts? The answer is because it's got no atmosphere. And I used to get well booed when there were Coventry supporters present, but as soon as they won the FA Cup, I had to drop it from my act.
The 90s saw further improvements at Highfield Road. The East Stand rose up out of the demolished Spy and Cop at a cost of £4 million.
When Hooky went, I kept going, pass, stop, just pass, stop, and then he kept going, and I was like...
Yeah, he was one of them players that just got the ball. I used to say, get his head down, never stop, but he stopped in the right place that night.
That was a fantastic night. The Saturday before, we just beat Spurs 2-1 to stay in the Premiership. On the Monday, the sort of tickets were on sale for the testimonial, which was on Friday, the 16th of May, 1997, and they were queuing around the ground to get tickets, and it was unheard of before for a testimonial match to actually be sold out before the actual night, because most fans turn up on the night and play, but it was actually sold out before. It was just typical of the Coventry supporters. They just. It was an unfortunate accident which happened to me, but I think because of the type of player I was, and that you're down to earth lad and things like that, they just sort of took to me a bit, and on that night to come out, I mean it was raining for most of the evening, but it didn't dampen any of the spirit or anything, and they were cheering when we did the lap of honour. I think we had to do 3 in the end, because it just carried on and on and on. It was just tremendous, and obviously with United bringing a big side down as well, it just added to the whole occasion.
And it's taken on by Froggatt. 2 up with him. Froggatt goes for goal! That is absolutely brilliant!
What I remember, Roland made an interception and cut across the pitch, and he passed it into me, and I think I was sort of 5 or 10 yards inside my own half, and I just picked it up and ran with it and kept going, and no one came near me, and in the end I just hit it, and to be fair, you don't really know where they're going to go. You can only hope you smack one and it goes in the goal. I mean, if I'd have missed, then I'd have had Hooks and Noel Whelan caning me, because I should really have passed it to one of them. And thankfully it flew in the top corner, and we were on our way. That was a really good memory of Highfield Road. I mean, it's a terrific little stadium, and there was it just felt very homely. I think you get too many of these new super stadiums that just feel so cold and lack any spirit or atmosphere. But Highfield Road is one of the few grounds that unfortunately it's now going to go, but that actually retain that sort of spirit.
Well, with us both being Coventry fans, it seemed the only place to get married, and it was my idea. I just said to him, I think it should be at the Coventry football ground, and he said, yeah, why not?
We had the full run of the place, really. We got
we got married in one room, signed then in the boardroom. Then we came down here and had our photos taken in the dugout, in our season ticket seats, and in the changing rooms. And then we had a reception in another room, and then the final evening as well in a room elsewhere in the ground. It was brilliant. But not many people get married at a place and then the place is taken away from them. You can always go and visit. We don't know what will happen to Highfield Road eventually. Not often that the place gets demolished or whatever if you get married there.
I just hope it's not an end to our relationship and our marriage.
Gordon Strachan was manager at the time. I think I just played Arsenal and Liverpool in the first team. Magnus Edmund had been injured. I announced I was going to retire, and Gordon very kindly says, "Well, listen, last game of the season is yours. You're playing, come what may." You know, he didn't have to do that, and I thought it was a great gesture from the manager because I didn't really expect it from him. So he put me in against Sheffield Wednesday, which was nice, and I was desperate for us to win, desperate for things to go well, desperate not to look an idiot. I was 42 by that time. But I enjoyed it, and again there was an enormous crowd on the day, and they were just absolutely magnificent. It was the best send-off anybody could ever have, and really, I spent 17 or 18 years playing for the club, played just over 600 games, and it really was the greatest send-off that you could ever have. And the boys were great that day, and they made sure that I didn't get a great deal to do, and we managed to win the game 4-1, which made everything absolutely perfect, really.
I started with the crew when we started the crew, if you like, in August 1994 with my wife, and in August 1996 we made our first appearance here at Highfield Road in the game against Nottingham Forest in the Premiership, and since then we've attended every game, also many reserve games and pre-season friendlies, what have you sort of thing, and at the last game of the season, the Derby County game, that will be our 260th game here.
You just get a really great buzz off it with everybody cheering you on and watching you. And you want to go on again after you've been on.
It's really good the way that you know that people are watching and they're taking notice of what you're doing. Even if you go wrong, it's quite funny to know that they laugh at you because it knows that they're watching.
I used to come with my mum when I was younger, and I used to think I really want to dance on that pitch one day because I was always looking for, I was always dancing when I was little, since I was 4, so I always thought one day I hope I'll be on that pitch, and here I am, so it's really good.
Hadji now putting Robbie Keane away. Larson is with him. Keane is in the box though, and that spells danger for Derby! It's a goal for Robbie Keane! He makes an instant impact in the Premiership.
His pace, his skill, his celebration. You've got the goals, and we need someone now like him. We could do with him so badly. Someone with that flair, someone who can get the crowd going. When he got the ball, there was such an anticipation around the stadium. Everyone thought we were going to get something, and we usually did.
If he hadn't come to us, I don't think he would have been as world class as he is now.
We don't get many internationals on our side, and that was a big. It was a sad day when he went.
I was here against Nottingham Forest the other week, and seriously, this first one's been packed for a long time, but it was brilliant. And there's shivers down your spine when everyone's singing and everything. It's brilliant.
I had to queue up for ages, and I just got one of the last tickets, and I had to sit in the East Stand. But even though it was behind a pillar, it was still an amazing atmosphere.
I think Coventry City do it on purpose. Every year they nearly get relegated, so they're the only club in the country that can fill the stadium for the last 2 or 3 matches. I mean, they've been brilliant.
Extremely sad today because my dad used to sit up in the front row there, sat there for 40 odd years, and unfortunately died a fortnight ago. And at Christmas he said, whatever happens, I'm going to make it to the last one, and unfortunately he didn't. So I'm a little bit choked on for that reason, but happy as well because we're moving on. It's forward, isn't it?
Special day today because we're coming up here for over 40 years, and yeah, it's an important day. Not only to stay in this league, which is vital, I think, before we go to the new stadium, but a lot of memories.
New stadium, new beginning for us hopefully. Hopefully we can start moving up now and do something next year with the new stadium, get a few fans in there like we had today and that. Nice sellout again, we need a bit more of it. And hopefully it's a new beginning for the club.
We're going to be back here again, are we? You know, so we've got to make the most of it.
It was nearly crying on the way up.
So here comes the Coventry City side for this last ever match at Highfield Road. And the crowd really are in sky blue heaven. Well, it's a sellout this afternoon. The pitch in absolutely immaculate condition. And that's congratulations to the ground staff here. Coventry City passing the ball around really slickly. That's found Gary McSheffrey, the local boy, and he's scored to put Coventry 1-0 ahead after just 20 minutes. Gary McSheffrey, born a long goal kick from Highfield Road, and it's so appropriate that he scores the first goal, just steering the ball into the corner of the net with his left foot. So what a great start for Coventry City. Now a lot of determination from the Sky Blues. That one through from McSheffrey, who's just bowled over by Mo Conrich. That must be a penalty. Conrich is pleading to the referee, but that was an absolutely certain penalty. No attempt to play the ball, just bowled him over. And McSheffrey, will he make it 2-0? He has! Coventry City lead 2-0 after just 29 minutes. Well, so far this is a dream start for Gary McSheffrey, for Coventry City and for this capacity crowd at Highfield Road. Long ball looking for Dele Adebola. Shrugs off Konjic. Jinks his way round Michael Johnson, just walks the ball into the net, and that's number 3 for Coventry. Well, already this match is exceeding expectations, with the Sky Blue following. The power from Dele Adebola, and then the subtle finish. Corner on the right-hand side for Coventry, floated in, the flick on I think from Stern John, and can you believe it, 40 minutes gone, it's Coventry City 4, Derby County 0. And the touch was enough from Stern John. And Derby, and they pull one back. Adam Boulder, that's a tremendous shot into the corner of the net. Probably too little too late for Derby. Coventry 4, Derby 1. Stern John surrounded by 3 defenders, and he really threads that through the eye of a needle. 5-1 to Coventry City. The crowd are going quite delirious at the moment. No wonder after a goal like that. Great first touch from Stern John. He just drilled that ball past Lee Camp in the Derby County goal. And Eddie Arkesh, who's been at the centre of
the most positive moves for Derby. And that's a daisy cutter from Paul Pesky-Solido, which just slithers into the corner of the net. Well, Derby have pulled another back. It's 5-2. Coventry really have passed the ball around superbly well on this slick surface at Highfield Road. Now, ball coming across to Andrew Wing, hits that, slight deflection, it's into the corner of the net. And Andrew Wing does a jig for joy. It's Coventry 6, Derby 2. It's a 6-hit on this final afternoon at Highfield Road. Look at that for a finish. And that's it, the final whistle. 106 years of football at Highfield Road comes to an end. The players coming out for an encore. On the day, Coventry said goodbye to their famous old home. There's a few sad Coventry fans, but they'll always have their memories, especially of today.
We knew we had to perform today, and to win how we did was a fantastic result. You know, the lads, it's thoroughly deserved, to be honest. I thought we played well start to finish, created chances. I know it's 6-2, but I think we could have scored more goals. But you listen to the reception, the fans have been fantastic.
Fantastic way to send the old stadium off. We wanted a win. We got about our job from the first whistle, really, you know, and there was never any doubt that we were going to win.
You know, we heard before the game all the players, the past and present, and you know, the last couple of weeks it's all been built up to this, so we knew what we was going to expect, but it's a fantastic game, we're all delighted.
The fans were charged, the players, give the players a lift as well. I don't think anyone could have come here and not been moved by the amount of support and the feeling around the place.
The memories will always be there. Highfield Road will be history, but you know, like I say, it'll always have a big place in Coventry's history. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure the new stadium, you know, that is progress, and I'm sure that it's going to be bigger. It's a magnificent design. Everybody's seen it, and I know that people can't wait to get in there. And hopefully that'll take the club to, you know, to a bigger level, to a higher stage even.
There's a lot of history here, and it's good memories, and no one's going to forget this place. And we just want to make sure that the new ground, you know, we create the same atmosphere as what, you know, this old ground does, and it's going to be hard to match it, but hopefully, you know, a new spirit will be born, and we can go onwards and upwards.
A great times. Very sad day for me. That day we leave Highfield Road, because I had some wonderful times there.
The way I look upon it with Coventry is we should have the happy memories of Highfield Road without any doubt. You can't take those away from people. But on the other hand, in moving into another era where we're looking for Coventry to be in Europe, so on that basis it's part of the life, part of the history. All that I hope is that the team wins more matches on the ground it's going to than they won on the one on which they're leaving. And I don't mind if they break my record there.